Okay. So,
And we can always redo it.
okay.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Now question. So free talk, frankly. Okay. First, the question: may I interview Amy about real estate in Seattle?
Of course, you can interview me about real estate in
Yeah.
Seattle, Reina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so nervous. I'm so sorry. Okay, questions. Why did Amy become a broker?
Okay, that's a good question,
Yes.
because every broker has a very different story. In the United States, it's very common for real estate brokers for it to be a second career for many people. So in my case, I was an actress for many years, and I actually was cast as a real estate agent, you know, on TV or whatever. I moved to Seattle, back to Seattle in 2016, and I was done with acting. And a friend always was telling me I should go into real estate. My brother was doing real estate with Windermere Real Estate. And I respect my brother a lot, and he was doing a good job. And I thought, well, let me learn a little bit about this. And I learned about it. And I found it very interesting. And it was a very different shift from an artistic life. But what is similar is that there is a level of a resourcefulness and variety. What I love about real estate is that you work with a lot of people as a team, you know, title people, stagers, inspectors, all this other stuff. And then you're responsible for your own work, but it's very community oriented. But you learn about a lot of different things, but you're not an expert at anything, really, other than contracts. But you learn a little bit about air conditioning systems. You learn a little bit about this neighborhood. You learn a little bit about roofs, you know. So I like that variety, and I found that I found it very stressful to buy a home when I bought for the first time, and I like feeling like I'm helping something be less stressful for someone else. Yeah.
You are so kindly, and I saw you talk to your clients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and talking. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to
Good
feel.
network.
Yeah. It's nice to feel like.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, buying a home, it's a huge decision, and it's very important. It's a lot of money. It's where you're going to live, and I think, you know, a lot of my job is, of course, understanding contracts very well. That's what I have to be an expert on, and understanding areas of the city. But I think a lot of my value is just being a bit of a buffer, an emotional buffer, and someone to talk to when they're trying to make very hard decisions and being very stressed out. And it's hard to always have clear-eyed perspective, you know, in the middle of that.
But you are a nice broker, I think. Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, thank you. So next question is, when did Amy first learn about home staging?
I guess I hadn't thought about home staging much until, so I sold, I didn't buy my own home until I was in my 40s, relatively late. And then when we sold it, I wasn't a broker then, and we didn't use professional staging like an outside stager. We used our furniture, which was pretty good, and that was in Miami, where it's more common to use your own furniture. And so we just talked about, we removed certain furniture pieces, because staging, there are two ways of staging, right? You use the furniture that the person is already living in, right?
I know that.
So that's more like you clean stuff out.
You have to.
And they're both
Yes.
staging.
Yeah.
You clean stuff out, maybe add a little something. So I thought about it, and I thought about, you have to think about, even in your own home, okay, it works fine in your own home, but like I have that beautiful china cabinet that you saw. And I'm like, well, it does kind of block your path in. It works for us, but I'm like, oh yeah, I see why it needs to go out, even if it's a beautiful piece. And by the way, when I sold my home, we had Mojo. And sometimes Mojo, my parrot, was in the home when buyers would come through. I wasn't there. Mojo was there. And I actually, at one point, I knew that an appointment was coming by. So I took her out. I took her to a job. And my agent said, oh no, people like to meet Mojo. They like to play peekaboo with her. No, I don't recommend that. It's not a good idea. I think it might work in Miami. But especially in Seattle, which is a slightly different culture, real estate culture, you don't want an animal, no matter how charming she is. You don't, because you don't want, she might be wonderful, but it will distract from the home. Yeah.
Okay. It's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Okay. Then third question is, one second. Okay. Please tell us about the characteristics of properties in Seattle.
Okay.
Yes.
Because they are distinct relative to certainly other countries, but even other areas.
Yes.
So in Seattle, there are broad categories, and I'm talking about like in the city, not so much the suburbs, like say Bellevue or Edmonds or Tacoma, but in the city, because I work in Ballard, or downtown. The main type, so what's a classic Seattle home is often something that was built in, like, let's say the 1920s to 1940s. Like, that's a classic Seattle home. A craftsman is a very common home. Usually has a peaked roof, often to let rain and snow fall off. The colors that we often use are deeper or darker, let's say blues or grays, as opposed to maybe in the south, southwest, you might get more pinks or yellows or something. So those are sort of classic, and then there's, I'll say sort of mid-century homes also. Those can have flat roofs. Actually, you saw one that was built in 1950, just the other day. So that's a very typical 1950s home. That was the one where there was a lot of work going on, right? And we were kind of trying to keep a lot of the original wood. So there are different ages, right? So that's, let's say, a very stereotypical old Seattle home. Then there are homes that have been built, particularly in the last 15 years, so it's 2024, right? Or the last 20 years. As our density has gone up with especially with our increased tech jobs, a lot more people have come in who don't need large homes, and they don't want to pay for a large home, and they don't want to live outside. So we've increased some of our density, especially in the very walkable areas where you were in Ballard. So we will make what are called townhomes. And when we say townhomes, sometimes, we're in a townhome right now. Sometimes it will have an attached wall, sometimes not, like you've been in our home. We call it a townhome. It technically is not. It's a standalone home, but they're very vertical. And they're very often very, we'll say, boxy. They've been a little controversial because a lot of people go, oh, they look very sterile. They look very plain. And especially they're in areas where there are those older craftsmen's homes. Now they're just much more common. They're often more efficient in many ways, and a little less expensive to build, easier to build in more dense areas. So that's another, I'd say, what's almost a typical Seattle home. And we have a fair amount of condominiums, but not a lot. We are traditionally a single family home mostly. I believe that as of now, around 70% of Seattle is single family homes, which it may be a nice characteristic for neighborhoods, but it is part of the reason why our prices are so high. Because you know, with density, the more supply, the lower the prices. So one thing that we're doing, this is very new in the last couple of years, we're taking those single family lots and they are allowing what are called accessory dwelling units, ADUs, either attached accessory dwelling units or detached accessory dwelling units. And you just saw one here in North Seattle. That's kind of an accessory dwelling unit. No, it's a small home. But not everyone needs a big home. Not everyone needs a big yard, but they want the feeling of a home, like a house. So those are coming along slowly, but I have a lot of hope. What's nice about them is they still look like houses, you know, and people like that. It still keeps the characteristic of the neighborhood. So it's been not the easiest thing to work out. How do you keep the neighborhood feel, the residential feel, but still create more homes, more density, in what is a very sort of a tight geographical area. Another thing is we have a lot of hills. So another thing you have to look out for is sometimes you'll live on very steep hills. And that will give you a great view, but it's not very easy when the rare times that it snows or there are problems. So
I surprised that a few days ago I came here in Seattle. I surprised that huge house in Tokyo is smaller.
It's much smaller.
Much smaller. And like apartment.
Exactly.
Apartment.
Far more apartments because Tokyo is obviously closer to New York, right? That's the idea. I mean, Tokyo is much bigger, physically bigger than New York, but it has the density similar to, I'll say, Manhattan. Seattle doesn't have that density. So I would say that our homes are more medium-sized. So if you were to go down to Texas, say, or Arizona, flat areas where it's easy to build out, where there's a lot of land, you'll see even in the suburbs here, you'll see some larger homes. So those homes are much bigger. So most of the homes that you've seen, you've been in our home. So our home, for reference, is 1,500 square feet. So I guess you'd have to translate that to meters.
Wow.
So, and I would say that's around average for 2024. Years ago, people lived in smaller homes. Actually, I don't know what the average size of a home in Seattle is. It might be a little above average, but it's just a meet for the United States in general. For the average city, let's say if we were talking about a city like Denver or St. Louis or other things, I would say it's around average size, is my guess.
I want to go to Texas and Arizona's house. Those are big. I want to see. It's so far from here. It's Texas and Arizona is so far.
If you were to drive, from Seattle, let's say just San Diego, right?
San Diego.
And that's just straight south. Texas is a little more east. If you were to drive from here to San Diego, and that is like a straight highway, really easy to get to, it would be 24 hours. Basically 3 days of driving.
Wow.
I don't know how long it would be to Texas. I would guess 30 hours, maybe, I don't know, 35 hours? I don't know. I don't know how you get there. Anyway.
Next time, I hope to.
It's a long drive.
Take
an airplane. I think to go to Houston from here, maybe 3.5 hours by airplane, I think. Maybe 4. I can't remember.
Arizona. 3 half.
About 3.5, I think, to go to Dallas or Houston. That's my guess.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Maybe a little longer.
Okay, next question. Oh, it's okay.
We'll take a
Yes,
we'll
okay.
take a pause.
Okay,
That's good. You're
Thank
ready
you
to
so much. Yeah.